Y'all, about 450 years before the birth of Jesus, the Old Testament presents a story of an extraordinary man. He doesn't start out extraordinary. He's just the cupbearer for the king of the Persian Empire. His name is Nehemiah, but what he does is incredibly impactful for the Jewish people living in and around Jerusalem. Nehemiah had a cush job, the wine bearer of the king, the one who served him his wine through the day. Artaxerxes is the king. That's not actually a name, that is actually the title, Artaxerxes. That's what the Persian king was called. But what had happened was the Jews had been dominated and conquered by the Chaldean Empire, the Babylonians. They had been conquered and they had been taken captive. And so all the Jews were run out of Jerusalem. Jerusalem was destroyed. The temple was destroyed. The walls of Jerusalem were destroyed. And now it's 150 years later. The Chaldeans are no longer in charge. The Persians had come along and they had taken over, and many Jews had moved back to Jerusalem and they had actually rebuilt the temple and tried to have some normal life there. But Nehemiah and people like Nehemiah had found it comfortable living where they lived. They were doing their thing. They thought, this is good. We're proud we're Jews, but we don't have to move back to Jerusalem. That's where the story picks up. And what we find, if you were to read the book of Nehemiah this afternoon, you would find at the very beginning, as Nehemiah is just doing his normal duties, some friends come to him from Jerusalem. Look on the screen. They also told me that the walls of Jerusalem were still broken down, and the gates had not been restored since the time they were burned. When I heard all of this, I sat down and cried. Here Nehemiah is far from his homeland, the homeland of his people. He had grown up with all these rich stories of what it meant to be a Jew. He knew what had happened when the Babylonians had crushed Israel. And he had heard that they were rebuilding, and he was proud of that. But then these people from Jerusalem said, Nehemiah, you have no idea. The walls are still broken down, and we are vulnerable to enemy attacks, and we live every day scared to death. So Nehemiah walks around for the next several days, and he's just downcast. And King Artaxerxes says after several days, what is wrong with you? You're one of my favorite servants. You just seem to be depressed. What's going on? And Nehemiah says, King, they came and they told me that the walls were still broken down, and it's just weighing heavy on me. And Artaxerxes, not a believer, Artaxerxes says, you know what? You're one of my favorite guys. You take a leave of absence and you go home to your homeland and you see what you can do to have impact and make a change so you'll feel better about things. So Nehemiah went to Jerusalem. It's an amazing story. Look on the screen. He says, as I went, I got to Jerusalem, I inspected the broken walls of the city and the gates that had been destroyed by fire. He goes out literally at nighttime. He goes out, doesn't tell anybody, and he just goes out with a lantern and he just begins to explore and see what all is wrong. Then he called the leaders of the town together the next day. Look on the screen. I told them how God had been with me and helped me and what the emperor had said to me. And they responded and said, let's start rebuilding. And they got ready to start to work. It's amazing. Now, it was tough. It was tough times. If you can imagine, the enemies of Israel didn't want them to rebuild the walls because they had come in regularly and they would plunder the city. And so as these people, many just like me, no calluses on their hands, not really good at building, they all took their place on the wall and they all began to work. The enemies would come and they would attack them. They had to learn how to, with a trowel in one hand, working on the wall, have a sword in the other hand to fight off the enemies. It's an incredible story, the way they kind of keep the battle going and continue to work on the wall. And look what Nehemiah says in chapter 4, verse 22. During this time, I told the men in charge that they and all their helpers had to stay in Jerusalem at night so we could guard the city at night as well as work in the daytime. I didn't take off my clothes even at night, neither did any of my companions, nor my servants, nor my bodyguards, and we kept our weapons at hand. That's the kind of work that's going on. It's kind of amazing. And then it was done. Nehemiah 6:15, after, this is astounding, after 52 days of work, the entire wall was finished. And it's one of the great stories in all of antiquity of people who put their mind to doing something impactful and in a relatively short period of time, making a difference. That's what I want to talk to you about today. Would you bow your heads with me for just a moment? Oh God, I pray this day you would speak to our hearts about what it means to make an impact. And I pray all of us would be stirred at the potential that resides in each of us to be a catalyst for change. And I pray this in Christ's name. Amen. It's impossible to know how different the world would be today if Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, had never lived. He brought us intuitive desktop computers. He brought us the Mac, the iPod, the iPhone, and the iPad. He also gave us Pixar, a movie studio that changed how animated movies get made. Think about this for a moment. In a challenging economy, many of us look for a side hustle, a way to kind of make money on the side. Steve Jobs' side hustle was Pixar. That's crazy. That's crazy. Steve defined his purpose for living and the purpose of his company he built in a simple but powerful statement. I love this. We will kind of camp here. He said this: we're here to put a dent in the universe. Otherwise, why even be here? When Steve said universe, he wasn't talking about the stars and the moons and the planets and the galaxies and the black holes and all that stuff. He was talking about culture. He wanted to make an impact on our shared culture, and so he did. Apple once released one of the most inspiring television commercials ever produced. The company was on the brink of slipping into irrelevance and failing, but with these words, the company came roaring back. Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify them, or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. And that captured the nation and then the world. And I remember when I was the only person that had an Apple product, and now everybody in the world has an Apple product, but it was because they grabbed us and said, this is for those outside of the box, creators, the originals, the misfits. Any individual, any company, any nonprofit crazy enough to rebel against the status quo has the potential power to make a lasting dent in the universe. They can make a dent in our culture. But those dents don't happen unless we're willing to think differently, to be willing to bump up against normal and make things happen. As a young woman, Julia Child didn't really feel like her life had a purpose. She was 6 feet 2 inches tall, the tallest student at Smith College. She wrote in her diary that she felt big and unsophisticated. She said she accepted life the way it was. She listed her occupational ambitions as no occupation decided, marriage preferable. It wasn't until she was 37 years old that Julia Child discovered her love of food. She was 49 years old when her first book, Mastering the Art of French Cooking, was released, and that was after being rejected by 2 publishers who told her, we can't publish this, nobody really cares about food. She was 51 years old when her television show, The French Chef, went on the air in Boston. And now we live in a culture that's rich, a rich food culture that's filled with a diversity of ingredients and tastes that are from all around the world. Before Julia began to make her dent in our cultural universe, we were mostly eating simple foods from the gardens, TV dinners, and casseroles that we made from cans. Steve Jobs made a world-changing impact on how media is made and consumed, and Julia Child made a world-changing impact on the foods we enjoy. We do live in a foodie culture we would not have had she not discovered and pursued her passion, and in a small way and yet large way make a dent in the universe. That's what I want us to talk about today. How do you make a dent in the universe? I think originality is a key thing. These people were originals. They didn't try to copy anybody else. They did a different kind of a thing. Originality certainly can change the world. Originality is Rosa Parks refusing to move to the back of the bus. Originality is Steve Jobs recognizing how unpleasant it was to use mobile phones because the menu systems were confusing and unattractive. Originality is Julia Child teaching Americans to cook using fresh, real ingredients when the trend was toward frozen foods and canned foods and processed foods. Futurist Malcolm Gladwell refers to these special kinds of people who successfully make a dent in our shared cultural universe, not as misfits and rebels. He says this: these are people who follow what he calls the laws of the few. The laws of the few. It isn't necessarily a matter of being weird and different from the norm. It's a matter of having a bold new idea, having the talent to communicate it and the courage to step out and pursue something that is different. Now, for this to happen, for you to make a dent in the universe, for you to have genuine impact, I think 4 things need to happen. The first thing is this: I believe it begins with a realization that the way things are could and should be improved. It means you looking at your life and saying things that I am participating in can and should be improved. I know some of you are thinking, Ray, how can I think about like my work being improved or the church being improved or things I'm a part of being improved when my life right now is a wreck? You're smart. I'm with you. All of us need to look right now at our lives. Are there things in our lives that need to be better? We don't have to be stuck where we are. It's one of the beautiful things of believing the way we believe, that there's a God who is for us, not against us, who is wanting to pull us into a better place. He is for us. We can actually look at where we are in our lives. We can take note of this very place and we can say, but I want my life to look like that. And we can actually take the steps necessary for that to become a reality. That is indeed where it starts. That's indeed where it starts. But then it can take all kinds of implications for business, for your church family, for nonprofits that you work with. All of those organizations need you saying, how can we make a dent in this universe? How can we do something that is beyond ourselves? Let me give you a question that has been in my mind for the last several weeks that maybe will help you as you think, how does this work? Here's the question: how can we do what we do and do it uniquely better and different than anyone else? Your job, your church family, any organization you are in, how can we do it uniquely better? Now, don't stop just with unique. You can do things unique and it can uniquely suck. It can uniquely be bad. I've seen uniquely bad things. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about uniquely better. How do you do that? How do you do that? It takes you being a growing and expanding person. You can't be satisfied with just staying like you are. That's one of the things I hope you find at the Village. We want to get better. We want in every area of our life. Do not settle for stagnation. That is not the way it's supposed to be. Be getting better in every area of your life. Pay attention to how other people are doing it. Look at people who are successful at that dent in the universe and say, are there things maybe I can learn from them? We call that awareness advantage. Are there some things I can learn from these people who are doing it a little bit differently? Here's something else I want you to get. Learn to be a student, not a critic. Critics it's the easiest job in the world is to be a critic. When people criticize, it's like, it just makes my skin crawl because I think you're not doing anything. And yet you're critical of people who are attempting to do something great. Don't be satisfied with being the critic. Be the student. Be the one who's always looking for new opportunities and new potential. One of my favorite leaders of all time is Nelson Mandela. He spent 27 years in prison and then got out in 1990. By 1994, he became the president of South Africa. He served for 5 years, but he's genuinely considered one of the greatest leaders in the history of the world, and almost all cultures recognize him as a truly great leader. That's unusual. Most cultures will have problems with most leaders, But Mandela seems to transcend all of that. As an old man, shortly before his death in 2013, he was asked by a journalist, how did you become a great leader? How did you become a great leader? And he said this, I'm a son of a tribal chief in South Africa. And he said, as a young boy, I remember going to tribal meetings with my father, and I remember two things about watching my father. First, we always sat in a circle. At every tribal meeting I ever went to, we sat in a circle. I remember that. And he said, this was the other thing and the most important thing. My father always was the last to speak. Think about that. Most of us think it is our place to speak first. Let me tell you what I know. Let me tell you what I know. Let me tell you this. But Mandela said, I watched my father and he listened. He listened to wisdom. Listen to what this person said, what this person said, and what this person said, and what this person said. And then when he spoke, he had the ability to kind of bring all of the power of everything that he had listened to into one concise way of doing things. Don't be the critic. Be the one who listens. I like this quote. This might be one you take a picture of. I like this very much. Never criticize something you don't understand. Never criticize something you don't understand. The moment you start criticizing something you don't understand, you stop learning. And when you stop learning, you forfeit your ability to lead. I love that. Never criticize something you don't understand. And can I tell you something from our evangelical brothers and sisters around the country? They talk so much on Facebook about stuff they don't understand. It's okay not to talk about stuff that you don't understand. Just be quiet. It's okay to be quiet. Here's something else I want you to get. If you want to make a dent in the universe, keep your eyes and mind wide open. Keep your eyes and mind wide open. There's a word I've been playing with the last few weeks, and I like this word, vujade. You ever heard that word? I want us to start having vujade moments. Let me tell you where I came up with this. Everybody here knows what deja vu is, right? Deja vu, that occurs when we encounter something new, but it feels like we've seen it before. I feel this, it's brand new to me, but I think I have experienced this before. The opposite of that, I think, would be called vujade. That's when you face something that's very familiar. This is so familiar, and yet I feel it new. This is the same thing, but now I'm feeling it different. I have a different perspective now. Vujade. That's what you want to have in this life. You want to see the very same thing you saw yesterday, but say, I see it with different eyes now. That's where the dent in the universe can happen. Let me give you one other thing. This is a cool thing. You want to make a dent in the universe. When you're around people who are talking about how that can take place, replace saying how with saying wow. Replace saying how with saying wow. By that I mean, when we say how, that has a way of killing things, doesn't it? How? How are you going to pay for that? How are you going to do that? That's impossible. Nobody's ever done that before. That's crazy. You're doing it different than anybody's ever done. It's not going to work. How? But when you say, wow, that's interesting. Let's talk more about that. Let's figure out, let's dig a little deeper there. Let's see how that can become a reality. Let's kind of open our minds a little bit and explore how that can become something real. I think for you young parents, it's one of the great things in the world. Don't be always killing a young person's dreams. Say, wow, that's a good thought. That's a good thought. Your greatest contribution to the world may not be something you do, but it may be someone you raise by having a wow perspective instead of a how perspective. Let me move quickly. Second thing that has to take place if you're going to have genuine impact is somebody has to decide to take bold action and initiate change. That's Nehemiah in our story. 150 years after Nebuchadnezzar destroys Israel, Nehemiah comes on the scenes, and Nehemiah makes a genuine difference because he is willing to step out and have genuine impact. That's huge. And it's important for all of us to be willing to do that. It takes bold action to initiate change. I was thinking of many of you in this church. I was thinking of Brandon and Jenna and what they did when they started their church. That was a bold action. They didn't know they could be pastor. They didn't know they could do that. They're starting in their living room, and yet 4 years later, they had a place of service. They had the pulpit, the chairs, the band, the outreach, the baptisms, the communion. They had all of those things. They didn't know that. But they said, you know what? We've got to step out. We've got to step out. Jane and I at night would say, oh, God, I hope they're doing the right thing. But they did. They were willing to have a bold step, and that was great. Here's something else that has to happen. The idea has to be communicated so people understand it and are inspired to pursue it. Nehemiah gets the team together and says, we can do this. There's a guy named Meshullam. He's only got one little verse in the Nehemiah story, Meshullam. The place it says he lives in is this little tiny little room. He lives in a little room, but he's out every day working in front of that little room to repair his little part of the wall. Everybody's doing it because Nehemiah has sold them on the idea we're making a dent in the universe. We're going to have genuine impact. We're going to build the walls of the city in a way that they will stand against enemy oppression. It was a beautiful thing. And that's what I think we're going to see here. I think we are going to see over the next months and years our church get more bold in saying, can we be uniquely better? Can we use the talents and gifts that God has given us to really make a change, a genuine change in people's hearts and lives? Can we do something that maybe's never been done before? And I think many of us are going to be just kind of giving that clarion call all the time. Can we do it? Can we do it? And we're going to see great things happen. Jimmy, let me say just another word, and then we're going to close. This morning, as Anchor City joins the village, I want to share my heart just for a couple of minutes with all of you. When we started the village 25 years ago, and I can't believe that, 25 years ago, I was 8 years old. It was an amazing thing. To be so talented, so young, no. But I wanted the village to be a perfect place for people who weren't perfect. We said that all the time. We're a perfect place for people who aren't perfect. We said this was going to be a place where you don't have to put on a show pretending to be better than you are. You don't have to put on a show pretending to be better than you are. I don't have the answers. I have more questions, so many more questions than I have answers. I just know there's a God who loves us. There's a God who is for us, not against us. Jesus came to show us exactly what God is like. And he loves us, and we don't have to pretend. A couple of years ago, many of you know I was tired. I was so tired. I had kind of run the race, and after 22, 23 years, I was physically, emotionally, spiritually, I was so fatigued, and I was ready to give up on ministry, really. I really thought, I don't know if I can finish. I want to finish, but I don't know if I can finish. I was so grateful that Jeff came along and joined us, and he took the pressure off of me. You have no idea what it felt like to have weeks when I didn't have to prepare a message, and I could just think, and I could just pray. And I didn't have to get up, and I didn't have to talk. I just could kind of be. And him coming on board gave me time to figure out what wasn't working as well as I wanted it to work. What needed to happen in me. I wanted to find my passion for the mission. I wanted to get to the place where I could stand up here on Sunday mornings and teach spiritual and life ideas in a fresh way that really did help people get better. I didn't want to just keep doing the same stuff. Listen, I've been doing it for a long time. I've been doing it for a long time. I've been doing it 30-something years. I can get up and I can preach the same stuff. I know how to do that. I didn't want to do that. I wanted it to be something that would stretch you, something that would stretch me. And so that's what's been coming through my mind. I wanted to find my passion for ministry. I wanted to help people get better. Over the last several months, my heart has come alive in a way that I did not think possible. And my excitement for this place has soared. Jane will tell you, it has soared. It's like I have come back to life. My excitement about studying new things so I can teach in a more relevant way has been thrilling to me. It has made me a better me, and for that I'm very grateful. I'm still absolutely committed to the Village being about diversity. I love that. I love that we are the most, Anchor City, this will be one of the most diverse places you will ever see. We believe it's one of the most diverse communities, spiritual communities in Atlanta for sure. We love that from every walk of life, they're here. We love that we are transgenerational. By that, I mean we have some silver hairs, gray hairs, we have some no hairs, we have some young people here, we have older people, we have white people and black people. We have people from every walk of life. We have people that are killing it, making lots of money, and they're really kind of, life is going really well for them. We have people that are struggling but trying to get on the right track and really working. We have people that live in nice houses. We have people that are homeless that came from under a bridge this morning. And they're all in this place, and they are all treated 100% as equals in this place because God sees us all the same, and he loves us all the same. Our church is theologically diverse. By that I mean, you don't have to agree with anybody theologically to be in this place. There's no theological uniformity that you have to commit to, that we have to believe all the same thing. There's a lot of churches you can go to and y'all can just kind of believe all the same. But listen, I don't want to hang out with people that believe exactly everything I believe. There's diversity here. Some people believe it a little differently. That's fine. That's fine. The Village welcomes everybody. We welcome people regardless of sexuality. We don't judge anybody because of who they are. We want to love everybody as much as we can. We say, that's who you are, that's who you are. We just love you. One of the things many of you know I've struggled with as a pastor is talking about giving. I don't like talking about that. I don't want anybody to think that when we take up an offering that it's somehow enriching us. It's not. And yet it takes money to run a church. My discovery has been many places on Sunday mornings, pastors heap guilt on people to take a collection. And they make people afraid of hell, and they make people afraid that God is going to punish them if they don't give. And they do all of these things to generate a good offering. But we don't believe any of those things. We don't believe that guilt is the motivator. Love is the motivator. And I'm so grateful that people in this place give out of a heart that says we love this place. Because it's a place where we honor God and say, can we become better? Can we become a better husband, a better wife, a better parent, a better employee, a better business owner, a better member of the community, a better friend? Can we become better? And many people say, you know what, we're so proud of this place because that's what we say again and again and again. Let's do it together and make it better. I don't like that we have to spend money to fix a roof. I'd rather spend all the money we collect on Sundays to feed homeless people. And I think one day we're going to get to where that becomes more and more of what we're able to do because you have said we want to be a part of something like this. It's different. It's different. Nehemiah made a huge impact because he got outside of the box. I think at the Village, we have the chance to make a huge impact because we're willing to get outside of the box. I think many of you in your own lives are making huge impacts because you're willing to get outside of the box and be originals. Would you bow your heads with me, please? God, thank you so much for this moment. Thank you for giving us some time to think about what does it mean to make an impact? What does it mean to be an original? What does it mean to make a dent in the universe? May none of us settle for just status quo. May we stretch to be different, uniquely better in all that we do. And I pray this in Jesus' name.